Coming up on Theater Talk, the fascinating observation of intoxicated behavior on different substances that O'Neill had then is so important to us now.
It makes you think about, in a way, the hypocrisy of the war on drugs, where if you belong to a certain element of society, you can be locked up for smoking a joint. Yet, with impunity, the pharmaceutical companies, the drinks companies, the cigarette companies can legally kill you.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
For God's sake, Mary, forget the past!
Why? From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskin.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
So, Michael, as you know, New York City now has a powerful revival of the seminal, dysfunctional family drama, Long Day's Journey into Night.
Maybe the greatest American play,
yes,
I would argue.
I would say. The family is Jessica Lange, Michael Shannon, John Gallagher Jr., and as the patriarch, our guest, Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel, welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you so much.
Another terrific performance from you. I've seen you in A Moon for the Misbegotten with Cherry Jones, a production I loved. And I remember very well the Touch of the Poet, too, that you did.
Almost 10 years ago.
Well, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you, Michael.
Is this a role that you have been aiming to play for a long time in your career?
No, not really. I'm not one of those people, who covets a certain role and really wants to play it. I remember meeting Arthur Gelb. He was the biographer of O'Neill with his wife, Barbara, and he said, look, in a few years' time, this is when we were doing Moon for the Misbegotten, he said, you should think about playing James Tyrone. But that was as far as it gone, because you can't really drum it up on your own and say, okay, well, I'm going to play James. You have to wait to be asked.
Yeah.
And you have to wait for a production, obviously.
Well, you are perfect for the role.
Thank you. Well,
yeah.
Thank you. I don't know.
Is that a compliment?
A hammy, tyrannical actor?
Yes.
But it must be interesting, though, because we've interviewed Brian Dennehy, who played it with Vanessa Redgrave. And one of the things Brian said was that it's a fascinating role for an actor to play, because you are always faced, when you reach a certain level of success, with, are you going to do the art, or are you going to take the money and have that kind of a career? Do you think about that when you, in your life as an actor?
Well, Eugene O'Neill's father was one of the very first theatre matinee idols.
Right.
And he was also a theatre manager of a sort, and he bought this play called The Count of Monte Cristo, and he made a fortune from it. As he says in the play, made this kind of Faustian pact with his manager self and gave up his actor self. But I don't know that the crisis that he comes to in the play is necessarily just as an actor who sells out in a way for money. I think everybody has that regret somewhere along the line about life. It's what Robert Frost talks about, the road not taken. If I had taken this road, where would it have led me? Why did I live a life that was based on the material rather than the spiritual? Why didn't I follow my artistic self? Why didn't I follow my real passion? And I think that's a question that a lot of people ask themselves at some stage in their lives. Did I make the right decision? And who am I now as a result of that decision? And who might I have been had I made another decision?
I remember Michael Caine saying that he had that moment where he said, yeah, it was Jaws 3.
Well, there's an apocryphal story about Michael Caine and the theatre where I forget who it was, Peter Brook or one of the, Peter Hall maybe said to him, Michael, you should think about the theatre. Because Michael had made even at that time, he'd made 7,000 films. And he said, well, I haven't been in the theatre since The Long, the Short and the Tall. And whoever this was, Brooke or whoever, said, but you need to come back to the theatre, because the theatre is about art. And Caine is reputed to have replied, if I want art, I'll buy a Picasso.
Well, there you go. And likely he wouldn't have been able to come back. I mean, to take it seriously, we see actors come in who have had successful screen careers and come into the theater having not had any muscle exercise for a long time, if ever, and it doesn't work.
Well, live performance is a very different thing
Yeah.
to shooting 2 or 3 pages every 2 days and being able to say cut and can we do that again. And once you walk on the stage, there is no cut. You have to go through to the end.
And you're in a play that runs, it's a lengthy play.
Yes, and whether it's a short play or a long play like this. But I think there's an unconscious contract made between a theatre audience and the stage and, say, a film audience and the film. Unconsciously, the film audience knows the project is finished, edited, done. No mistake can happen. No accident can happen.
Right.
So you're in a very different relationship to the story that's been told. Whereas you go into a theatre, you know deep down that anything actually can go wrong. The very first night of the preview, when Jessica was doing that long soliloquy, at the very moving soliloquy at the end of the play, there was a knock on a door to the side of the theatre, and she kept going. And of course, the audience are thinking, "That's a knock on the door. That's nothing to do with the play." But they're keeping riveted to what she's doing. And then there's a handle being jiggled. And they think that's a handle being jiggled. And that still has nothing to do with what's going on. So eventually, it was revealed that it was a guy delivering a pizza to the wrong address. So that'll never happen in a movie theatre, where you're looking at the film and saying, "Oh my God, somebody's delivering a pizza. What's going to happen to the film?"
Now, going back to James Tyrone's dilemma, when he goes into mooning about what I should have been, could have been, he's pretty plastered at that point. The fascinating observation of intoxicated behavior on different substances that O'Neill had then is so important to us now.
The use of alcohol in the play, in vino veritas, as they say, that's also a brilliant dramatic device.
Yeah.
Because it allows the characters to be unfettered by any kind of restraint, so they can say whatever it is that they want to say to the other character. But in the tragic addiction of his mother and his father, and Jamie Tyrone, he honed in on something that we are suffering from in this modern age and still haven't found an answer to, which is the horrendous problem of addiction. And the opiate addiction that's sweeping the country now, the drug addiction, it makes you think about, in a way, the hypocrisy of the war on drugs, where if you belong to a certain element of society, you can be locked up for smoking a joint. Yet, with impunity, the pharmaceutical companies, the drinks companies, the cigarette companies can legally kill you.
So many more people can relate to this than back in the 1950s when this play first premiered.
I don't know that there was anybody writing about addiction before in such depths, of such incredible acuity as Eugene O'Neill did about addiction. And in a way, I think he suffered enormous guilt and shame because he had sacrificed his family to tell that story, which is why he never wanted the play performed.
That's right. And it was not performed in his lifetime, was it?
No, I don't think so. I think in 1953, the Royal Theatre in Stockholm did it. But he felt that he had betrayed his family, which I can understand.
Oh, yeah.
But in a certain sense, he's vindicating them because as more we understand it's an illness, that these things, these foibles they had, well, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't because there were bad people. This is the dynamic of the sickness.
Still to this day, I think there's a lot of people who consider addiction to be a moral failing, when actually it isn't a moral failing at all.
Have you had the experience of going up to the O'Neill Center in New London and going to the Monte Cristo house?
Yeah.
That is the set for the play. That is where the play takes place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, what were your impressions of walking through that house?
Claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I mean, how all that emotion was contained in those small rooms with little in the way of any kind of aesthetic beauty to relieve the awfulness of it. But it's a house built by somebody who, for want of a better word, is a miser.
Yeah.
A man who keeps
he doesn't finish the banisters on the staircase are not finished.
Oh,
they don't
that's
go all the way
marvelous.
down because he saved
But
on
he
the
was
wood.
being such a
I know, he's
cheapskate.
saving the
Okay,
wood.
but the thing that's really funny is you can be upstairs in what was her room.
Yes.
Where she would have been rattling
Yes.
around, and they would have heard her
Of
downstairs in
course.
the living room banging
Of course.
around up
She's
there.
an eternal presence upstairs. Once she says in the play, "I'm going upstairs to have a nap," we know what that means.
We're also...
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you quickly, in this play, 3 hours, 45 minutes long, wonderful. But that there's the way O'Neill's made it that each actor has time off, like a rest period off stage.
Yeah.
While other things are going on.
Yeah.
And I found myself wondering, well, what does Gabriel Byrne do to keep his focus and yet rest himself for his next moment?
You can't rest in a situation like that. You know, it's first of all, you hear the play over the tannoy.
Yes.
So you can never get away from it. You just have to be in a state of perpetual anxiety, masquerading as relaxation, you know, trying to say, okay, well, I'm ready to go. It's a play that you have to be disciplined about, that you have to commit to, that you have to focus on, because there are 5 of us in the play, and to use a mountaineering metaphor, we're all roped to each other. And if one slips, we all go down the ravine together. But our survival throughout the evening depends on each other. So keeping focus, keeping yourself healthy, emotionally kind of available. I found an interesting thing that in Moon for the Misbegotten that happened. When you do a play over and over and over again, the words recognize the emotion. And when the words come to when you get to a certain part of the play, the emotion somehow is related to the words, and you find the emotion coming out through the words, which is something I never really expected to find. But now I know that I can trust, if I'm focused, that the moments of emotion will come with the words. I don't know how that happens.
Well, it's a terrific performance as James Tyrone in A Long Day's Journey in tonight at the American Airlines
Yes.
Theater, the Roundabout.
Do not miss it. Just a staggering production.
Starring Gabriel Byrne.
And Jessica Lange, John Gallagher
Jessica
Jr.,
Lange.
Michael Shannon, and Colby Melfi.
All roped together. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you,
us tonight on
Michael.
Theatre Talk. Gabriel Byrne.
Thanks, Susan.
Pleasure.
What was it I wanted to buy, I wonder, that was worth? Never matter. It's a day late for regrets.
Yesterday I loathed her, now today I love her, and tomorrow.
We're delighted today, Susan, to be joined by a real Broadway legend, one of the great set designers of all time, Robin Wagner, who designed the sets for A Chorus Line and Dreamgirls and 42nd Street and The Producers and On the 20th Century. Welcome to Theatre Talk. And he is with a legend in the making as a set designer, the great David Rockwell, who is up for a Tony Award, an Outer Critics Circle Award, and a Drama Desk Award, too, for your set for the revival of She Loves Me on Broadway.
A set which gets as much applause as the wonderful actors do.
David also did Kinky Boots and Hairspray and the recent revival of On the 20th Century. Welcome. So, David, I'm curious, you were a young man in New York and you love the theater, right?
Yep.
You must have seen Robin's great sets in some of those shows. You remember the impact that they had on you? Were you thinking about being a set designer then and admiring his work?
Well, first of all, it's interesting that Robin is someone whose work has totally changed my life. When I came to New York, I was interested in many things. I was fascinated with theater. Mm-hmm. I was fascinated with theater, and I was most fascinated with how it brought an audience together. And so I would just get a single ticket and see every show there was. The first show I'm sure that I saw of yours was A Chorus Line at the Public Theater, which was what year?
Downtown. That was about
75.
75. So that was my first year of college, and I was coming back and forth to New York. And, it was astonishing. It was astonishing to see the power that the physical world could have on storytelling. And really, over the course of my life, Dreamgirls was one of the most amazing examples of movement and storytelling together, creating this powerful impact. And you couldn't really separate what was creating that.
I'm interested in this aspect that David brings up, though, of the scene being part of the storytelling. I mean, I think of Dreamgirls with those lighting pillars. Towers of light that moved and create that what Michael Bennett wanted, the cinematic effect. I mean, do you consider yourself, as a set designer, you're also sort of a dramatist, too?
Well, I wouldn't think of myself as a dramatist, but Michael definitely was a dramatist.
Yeah.
And, ideas, I think, really great ideas primarily come from the directors. if it's not in the script itself. But in this case, we also had a great producer, which was Joe Papp.
Right.
And Joe was brilliant enough to not have any budget for the show whatsoever.
For a chorus line.
Yeah. And when I asked him what the budget was, he said, "Budget? There's no budget." I said, "But you'll do something nice." So he ended up with a
You
piece
can
of
interpret
white
that
tape.
no budget a lot of different ways, right?
Yes,
No
you can.
cap or no budget.
Yes. Well, he didn't have either.
Yeah.
And he's proud of doing things for nothing. He never encouraged any kind of big production of the public. So, and that was part of his greatness. You know, it's just that you use actors.
Right. But you have the mirror. I mean, the thing we all remember from the chorus line are the music and the mirrors, and that was Robin Wagner with those mirrors.
Well, we had the periactoids that turned in the back. And those are ancient Greek
One of the
devices.
oldest forms of technology
Absolutely.
in theater.
Really?
Absolutely. It's
What are they?
three-
They're periactoids? What are they?
Periactoid.
And they're mirrors that shift?
Periactoids are three-sided columns that all turn together. So you can change from one set to the next in about 3 seconds.
You know, one of the things about technology in theater is it's not there to call attention to the technology. If you're looking at something and you're saying, "Wow, how's that done?" You're out of the show.
Right.
Versus, "Wow, that was an incredible transition that really conveys that story." So we use whatever technology is of service, but one of the things that's most interesting is, I think, theater, in some ways, everyone involved has to be telling the same story. So stage hands, everyone involved is involved in making one little movement happen.
Now, do you consider yourself when you're sitting down to do a stage, are you thinking like a playwright, like a dramatist, that the set is the set really is a character in the production?
It really is.
Yeah, you start out by sitting with the director, and we were talking earlier, right away you get a sense of whether that director is someone who's going to give you permission to do amazing things and kind of inspire you. And you read the play, you listen to the music, and in the case of She Loves Me,
Yeah.
Scott was really clear that Scott Ellis, who directed it, who had done the revival, only wanted to do it if he could come up with a whole new way to tell the story. And it was just such a great story and such a great world. So we came up with a way to tell that story where the movement really is a character in the play, and they dance and use it in incredible ways.
It's a magical boxes that just open up and things moving in and out. It's such an enchanting set.
It is a dream as a designer when you're working on something and every piece of it feels integrated. And
Well, one of my favorite sets, the original for On the 20th Century, which was a brilliant set. And then you did it for the Kristen Chenoweth revival. So was there a tip of your hat to Robin at all in your set?
well, there was a phone call to Robin.
It was so flattering because I've been admiring his work since he's come to New York. You know, I mean, I know he started here, but so when he called one day and he said, "I always loved your show, and how would you feel if I did it?" Right,
Right.
but not my show, but the show.
Right.
But did you borrow Robin Wagner touches
Well,
in your 20th Century?
Of all the Robin Wagner shows I've seen, I actually didn't see on the 20th Century. However, you can't really look at a textbook on theater history without seeing it, and everyone told me about it. And so it was, at the beginning it was a little intimidating following the footsteps of a production that was remembered for the design, among many other things.
That great train that you had in the set.
Well,
But-
he had a better one.
Yeah, he had a bigger train. Yeah.
I found a way, the way I found through that concern was for research. I mean, it always comes down to research, but in looking at travel posters of that period, I found the use of forced perspective in these posters that had extreme perspective very inspiring. So it kind of led us in a different direction. And then I remember calling Robin and saying, "Well, I'd love you to come see it." He was planning to see it anyway. But there's a certain, if you're going to take something and reinvent it, you want to acknowledge what it was before.
I didn't see the original production, but I have a vivid memory of Martin Gottfried's very good book, Broadway Musicals.
Oh, right,
And there's
yeah.
a full-page picture of Imogen Coca on the front of your train that you designed. I mean, it's thrilling.
She was brilliant, and she was totally blind at the time.
Really?
You know, her husband used to bring her to the edge of the wings, and then he would let her go, and she would know every inch of the stage.
Wow.
And then she would find her way back to that spot, and then she would be blind again.
Wow.
She was an amazing woman.
Now, you worked with one of the most demanding craziest people of all time in David Merrick on 42nd Street.
Oh yeah.
So what are
description.
what are the
But very smart.
right? But what are the dictates or what are the orders from David Merrick? What does he want in a set?
Red. That's it. Everything. I did 5 shows with David, and every time I would start with different color masking and all these other things, but it would always be red when we opened. You know? And he had a dyer of velvet and velour down in Philadelphia, and he used to go down and look at the color as it's being made on the cloth. He loved red. By the way, everything in his office was red as well.
Yeah, his whole office was.
Yeah, oh, sure, totally, except for the Ampere desk, you know, which was gold and black.
How did he tell you? I mean, how does he? If you know it's going to be red, why don't you just do it red from the beginning?
Well, I never really gave up on the fact that there were other colors in the alphabet.
Did you sneak him in?
Oh, we always had because Gower loved color.
Right.
And he didn't particularly like red very much.
Gower
for
champion.
more than one reason, right?
Right. Yeah.
But at any rate, no, it's just David. He had very specific tastes, and he didn't care what anything cost, because he usually figured out a way not to pay the guy who made it. You know. Yeah. But he was very clever and very tasteful in terms of the material that he chose. I mean, that was a great piece of work that. Not 42nd Street necessarily, but Some Like It Hot, for instance.
You were an assistant on Hello, Dolly as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, and actually, Hello, Dolly
Talk
was
about
the first
red.
time I was first assistant. But that was another Merrick show.
Yeah.
Who was the set designer of Hello?
Oliver Smith.
Oliver Smith.
Sure. And Oliver did these great drops. I mean, he was really a brilliant artist as a painter.
Right.
So we used to work on 3x5 cards, which I always loved, which are really in 1/4-inch scale. So he could design a whole show on a 3x5 card. Then he'd say, okay, you know what this is, and you'd know the vocabulary, so you could just draw it, you know, and then he would paint these gorgeous paintings, which are still around somewhere.
Designers today, you paint and draw, or are you doing everything on the computer now?
Well, you start with sketching, and I start with model making. So you start with, truth is, you start with whatever tool suits the project. So there are projects like On Your Feet was much more a model making piece, because it was about these towers that would shift and move and collage together. She Loves Me, we worked with hand sketches, and then we did very sort of involved computer animations, because what looks like a simple move of that perfume shop opening up are 4 separate pieces that are doing very complex things. And so starting in sketch, then going to models. And
Was that the most challenging part of that set? When the perfume shop opens up?
no, the most challenging part was the restaurant.
Yes.
I guess because I've been in a lot of restaurants and designed a lot of restaurants, and there's no wing space in Studio
That's right.
54.
Yeah.
And as Robin said about budget, sometimes limitations are a great thing. So since there was no wing space, we came up with the idea. I said to Scott, what if the appearance of the restaurant happens à vista with these 2 wagons that come around in front of it? So
And
that was
solve the problem.
Solve the problem, right?
yeah. And
Here's a-
thank God there's a great.
But he solved all the problems that way, because it's absolutely brilliant. He has a city which opens up and delivers other places.
Yeah.
And I think that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And a great scenic idea, because there was no place, and they all came this way into the middle. They were all downstage center.
Yeah,
that's hard to do.
Yeah, because if it's too far upstage, it's just distant.
This is where designers are like actors. They want to be down center, straight out. Because that's what works in the theater.
Absolutely, when it comes to
Put it in your lap.
I'm curious, one last quick question here. A couple of playwrights and book writers have told me that over the years, as the sets have gotten bigger and more technologically complex, that the writer feels sometimes entombed or trapped in the set. And you can't make the kind of changes to a show you were once able to make when, if you were at the Colonial Theater and you wanted to make the second act the first act, you could take the drops and throw them out in the alley. Do you find that to be the case?
Done it many times.
Throwing the drops out in the alley?
Yes, but also, I think most of the really good directors that I've worked with need to have a stage that breathes, so that you can get rid of, so it can go back and you can dance. And that was Michael's big thing, that he wanted it to be like a camera or something that would open and close. It just had, and if you didn't have the whole stage, you couldn't do the big numbers.
Right.
The other time, you want to be intimate, you want to be downstage, you want to be enclosed. So it's got to breathe.
In some directors, I remember on Hairspray, we decided, it was Jack O'Brien's suggestion, let's have no scenic solution to the finale out of town because we don't know where it's going to end up. So sometimes if you're developing a piece, you leave those holes in it where you can figure it out.
So in other words, you're not building the set and then you're stuck with the set there because you spent $500,000 on it.
Yeah.
And
The
that used to
hairspray
happen.
can came later.
The hairspray can came later, and actually after the hair curtain
Yes.
was a design we had that they were a little concerned about spending that money, but after the first preview in Seattle, Margot said, order the hair
We're going with hair critics. Okay, great. Well, David Rockwell, thank you for being our guest on Theater Talk. Good luck with She Loves Me. Terrific set, terrific production, really. And Robin Wagner, the Broadway legend, thank you for joining us tonight on Theater Talk.
Well, thank you.
Pleasure.
2 more minutes, 3 more seconds, 10 more hours to go. I'll know when this is done, if something's ended or begun, and if it goes all right, who knows, I might propose tonight at 8.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Dinelli Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you,